Hello. On today's episode of The Christian Next to You, I'm here with my friend Alan, and he is going to tell us about who he is and where he's come from to now being the Christian next to you. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you enjoy getting to know Alan a little bit better. Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Christian Next to You. I got to admit, that's kind of weird to say because this is no longer a new thing. This is kind of new because this is my first in-person interview. Let's hop right into who I'm with today. This is Alan. Alan, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you've come from, where you live, how old you are, if you're married. Tell us about all those things.
All right. Well, Parker, appreciate that introduction, man. And again, I just want to say congratulations on a great podcast. I think this is an
Thanks,
amazing idea. But real quick, my name is Alan Daniel Juarez Garcia. I did come from Puebla, Mexico, but I was raised here in Oklahoma City. I am 24 years old, about to turn 25, super scared, but I am married to a beautiful woman named Alexis Raquel Juarez, and she is just an amazing support. And I do have a daughter with her, and
How old is she?
she is 2 months. She is 2 months old, and it's crazy because she was actually supposed to be born on your guys'
Our
date,
delivery date.
and then
Yeah.
your delivery date was ours. So I think that's totally crazy and
Mhm.
so funny, man. But yeah, I am a dad. Would you like me to go ahead and talk about my work?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
What
I
do you do?
do work for Hobby Lobby, the company. My job and my position is a radio frequency technician. So we are responsible for a lot of the radios and all the equipment that's out there in the warehouse that gets the job done. Basically, gets the orders out to the stores, and just we really just take care of any sorts of technology equipment.
Cool. How long have
And
you been doing that?
I've been doing that for going on 3 years.
Nice.
But I did start off as a puller.
Okay.
And so pulling, receiving, I went ahead and did that for about 2 years. And I thought I'd go ahead and extend my opportunities to do something better.
Mhm.
I thought I could grow within a company, and it's a great company to work for. And I mean, I'm beyond super excited to have a great team behind my back. And I feel like sometimes having that good leadership management also pursues you to stay with the company
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
to want more, to keep pushing. And so that's what I've been really thankful for, because I know not a lot of people get that opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of people want in this department, but we're such a small department that it's super hard to get into. So it's
Gotcha.
kind of like you gotta climb your way up there.
Man, that's awesome that you're
Yeah.
there. Now, I'm a follower of yours on Instagram, and so
Yeah.
I know, you have this official occupation,
Yeah.
but you have a nice little side job thing that you've
Yeah,
got going.
so
Tell us about that.
I do have a nice little gig that I do. I am a part-time barber. It's something that I picked up maybe about 6 years ago. It was just one of those things. I was a server at Chileno's in Bricktown. It's no longer there.
That's so
So yeah,
sad.
it was such a great atmosphere, such a great environment. And I did have the opportunity to work in the patio area, that's where it was. Just working in that restaurant, that's where it was.
Cool.
If you weren't a server that was out there in the patio, you weren't a good server.
Oh,
Is
okay,
what
gotcha.
it
Yeah.
was just kind of the word around. But I just started getting into these phases of just growing my hair out. And one day I just was like, "Hey, let me just get the sides going." So
Interesting.
I went
That's a
ahead
bold
and
thing to
yeah,
do.
and so yeah, I did have my phase of a man bun. So I went ahead
Mhm.
and started having a man bun and going to the barber shops, and these little barbers that went ahead and did like $10 cuts, $12 cuts.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me just spend $15 on some cheap clippers and get to doing it myself, save me some extra bucks, and I don't have to drive anywhere. So I started doing that, and of course, wasn't the best in the beginning. It was just terrible, and I wasn't confident. But eventually, I kind of started learning my way around on how to handle the clipper and how to go ahead and look at the mirror in the right way. And so it wasn't until one day a friend was like, "Hey man, that's a pretty clean haircut. Who gave you the haircut?" I was like, I thank you." I said, "I went ahead and did it myself." He was like, "So you cut hair?" And I was like, "Yeah."
You're like,
Yeah. I was like, I didn't say
kinda.
kind of. I was just like, "Yeah, I cut hair." And he was like, "Well, how would you feel about, cutting me up?"
Mhm.
I was like, "Let's do it."
That's
I was
awesome.
so I went ahead and cut his hair. Of course, he was a great friend. He went ahead and he was like, "Man, this looks good. It's a pretty fly haircut." He felt confident. And so he was one of my first clients, and I honestly don't remember his name, but shout out to him because he took man, he made me feel good about my haircuts, and
It didn't go terrible? Like, it was a pretty good haircut, the
it
first one
was
you
it
gave?
was a good enough haircut
That
that you wouldn't
works.
have to wear a hat. Some
That's
people
Hey,
get
that
those
works.
haircuts where you're just like 2 weeks of wearing a hat, and so eventually I started getting good with him. I started learning how to cut his hair in a way that he wanted,
Yeah.
and we slowly started working into fades. And then, of course, I got that one good fade going, and one of his friends liked it, and they were like, "Hey, yo, send me your barber's info. Let me get in on that." And so that was the start of a whole. I mean, I don't know what you would want to call it. At the time, it was just for money, but now
Right.
it's just turned into this passion that I hope I can go ahead and take it with me in the long run.
Yeah.
It's it's really something that has changed my life, on just how people approach life. I mean, I get all different type of ages coming in my chair, and everybody just has a different story, man.
Yeah, that's
Everybody
awesome.
everybody just kinda they either come in having a good day, they either come in having a bad day, and, it's kind of a feel good moment because not only are you helping somebody build their confidence, but they're getting things off their chest that they can't tell their friends, family, and, it feels good. Feels good to know that somebody's there that trusts you.
That's
And
awesome,
so
dude.
that's another reason why I like having this part-time gig. But
Yeah,
like I said, I do plan on taking it far. I feel like that's where
cool.
my heart actually is.
Mhm.
That's where I feel like I'm more passionate about a lot of things. And so I hope that we can go ahead and bring some people in, get some of the youth ministry in, and I
That's
mean,
right.
yeah. So,
Well, that's
uh
super cool, dude. I'm really happy to hear that. You said it's something you're passionate about.
mhm.
It's more than just a hobby. What are some other things you're passionate about? I can tell from the hat you're wearing. You're a sports guy.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
I'm a sports guy. I do enjoy, another passion is just fitted hats. I
Really?
mean, I'm not your most athletic person. I mean, but I used to play a lot of sports in high school and,
Cool.
yeah, just collecting hats and, of course, just spending time with my two girls,
Yeah.
having my best friend and, my daughter, just having them. I enjoy grilling out. I mean, I don't post
Really?
that a lot.
Mhm.
It's kinda just something that it's my getaway.
That's cool. Yeah.
I feel like I always try to have a reason to just fire up the grill, whether it's a
Yeah.
hot dog or whether it's some carne asada, some of
Mhm.
that good old style Mexican barbecue. And, that's about it that I have as a passion. I mean, really, and hobbies, I feel like I don't do much. I
Yeah,
feel
I
like it's
gotcha.
it's all around my
Uh,
2 girls, and that's it, man.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, you've sounds like you've got a lot on a day-to-day basis with your job, with the hair cutting, and then
Yeah,
spending time with your girls, and then
yeah,
hopefully you can fit a nice little grilling session in there.
yeah.
Now, tell me, how long have you been a Christian for? Maybe tell me about your life before you came to Jesus, before you made that decision in your life. Did you ever go to church? What was your life like?
So, real quick, just a little story, so I hope it can make sense. I don't know if you're familiar with DACA. I feel like
Mm-mm.
I told you this maybe a long time ago, but DACA is it's a program that was brought into it was a program that was brought in by the Obama administration back in
Gotcha.
2012.
Okay, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So basically, it was just a program to where if you were brought into the United States under the age of 16, you did have a permit to kind of work, and you were able to go to school. You were able to have basically your own social security. In some states, you can obtain your driver's license, but I think that's changed nowadays. And it kind of gave you that way of just being a citizen without all fully granted citizenship um, benefits. So real quick on that, on how we got there is, I was brought over to the United States at the age of 8 months.
Oh, wow.
I was 8 months when my mom decided to make that step into giving us a better life, me and my brother. And but it was a scary step. I mean, every chance that I get, I try to ask her. I know it's not the best conversation that she likes to have because she did have to give up a lot, but she did bring me over at 8 months, and it was just kind of one of those things to where my grandma came with us, and my grandma had to take care of me, and all my grandma knew was Spanish. So Spanish was my first language. So growing up with my grandma being my mom, just on taking care of me because my mom was doing everything else, trying to pay for everything. I mean, talking about lights, food. She did everything to her power, and she did a wonderful job. And but growing up with my grandma took me everywhere she went. And my grandma was a very religious person. She has always been a religious person, and um she was a good Christian. I like to call her. She was my role model of a good Christian when I was young. So every Wednesday, every Sunday, she took me everywhere. But these were Spanish churches. And it wasn't until too long ago that I learned that they were Pentecostal churches. But I didn't know at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, hey, it's Wednesday. I get to go with these kids. We're just going to play around.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really much of learning about God. But I always grew up going to church with my grandma every Wednesday, every Sunday. And it wasn't until one day she was kind of like, what are you learning from this? Kind of like, what are you wanting out of this? And I was like, well, they never really taught us in church about what are we wanting out of this. And she was kind of like, I love you and I want to be with you forever. I kind of want to see you in this life growing up, and I want to be with you in the afterlife. She was like, but there's a way to get to the afterlife.
Man, that's cool.
And like I said at the time, I didn't understand it, but she did always want to make sure that I knew about God. She was always like, you need to learn the way around the Bible. You need to go ahead and try to not only preach, but you also need to practice what you preach. And it wasn't until, of course, I ended up getting older, and my grandma made the choice of wanting to go back home.
Mm.
She felt like she did her job. I was able to take care of myself, cook for myself, do things that a normal teen would. And so she decided to go back, and I started being on my own. There was really nobody to take me to Wednesday church, Sunday church. My mom, if she had the Sunday morning off, it would be church. And so that kind of started being a habit of going on Sunday mornings. And of course, my mom had to work, so we would just go every chance that we could get. And then it was kind of getting. I started growing up, and my mom started like talking to me about college,
Mm.
about life, about what reality is expected to be. And that's when she kind of broke it down to me as to like, you won't have the same opportunities that these other kids have. And that made me wonder, like, what do you mean?
Mm.
She said, well, colleges, driver's license, being able to work, that won't come as your other friends have the opportunity. And I asked, well, why is that? And she went ahead and told me, well, whenever I needed to and we needed a better life, I went ahead and brought you down here as an undocumented kid.
Mm.
And so, to me, that's shocking. I'm
Yeah.
taking all this in. It's not something that I was prepped for. It wasn't like she wasn't sugarcoating nothing. It was just all straight fat. And so I was like, well, what are we gonna do? And she tried to be the best support. I said, we'll figure something out. She said, I've always done my best to figure something out for you guys, so y'all can go ahead and live your guys' life to the fullest. And so as time goes by, I'm getting into school and high school. It was middle school. I started getting into middle school, and um It was around the Obama administration. I remember he started running his campaign as to what he wanted to do. And my mom at the time was she was on Obama's side because of the program DACA that he wanted to bring in. And so, I'm still young. Politics wasn't my biggest concern. So she was like, "Look, son, like he's about to get run office. And if he runs office, like this is your opportunity." And I'm like, "All right, cool, what do we need to do?" And she was like, "Just pray." And I'm like, "Okay, but grandma's not here."
Mm.
She was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Grandma always prays for me. Like, how do I start my prayer?" And she was like, "Just go with your heart." I'm like, "But how?" And so I kind of figured that out on my own. And that's when I really started paying attention to church and how they would start their prayers and how they would end them, how they would, ask who needs to be prayed about. So when I would have time by myself, I remember just learning how to pray like, "Hey, God, I hope you let me have a good day,"
Right. Yeah.
and it slowly started just kind of getting better. And it wasn't until that 2012 that program went ahead and got pushed, and so everybody was on it. I mean, you talk about any undocumented kid that was under 16, they were at the law offices. I mean, they were there trying to do everything in their will and their power to get that permit. And so we started we started doing everything that we could. I mean, I know it's me and you, but my brother was also there with that process. But for me, I didn't get the opportunity to grow up with my dad. I
Mm.
didn't have that dad that was there to kind of grow up with me. And so I vividly remember finally getting down to the last steps of it. I mean, we got all the documents, all the papers, anything that you needed to go ahead and get this process started. And so my mom goes to we're at the lawyers, and my mom goes to sign, and the lawyer says, "All right, now we just need the dad's signature."
Mm.
I was like, she was like, "He's not here." And she was like, "Okay, well, if he's at work, you can take this application home and have him fill it out and then, bring it back." And she was like, "No, like, he's not in my son's life." And she was like, the lawyer just kind of gave her this look like, "I'm about to break your heart."
Mm.
And she was like, "We can't process this application without a father's signature."
Wow.
And the look that my mom just made and looked at me and just kind of was like, "Okay." You know, she stayed so strong.
I'd
And
say her mindset is we're gonna figure it
yeah,
out through that whole thing.
and so she was just kind of like, "Okay." She was like, "We'll get it figured out." And so a couple of days pass, and at this time, like I said, my grandma's already in Mexico. So my mom has contacted my grandma, like, "Hey, we need his dad's signature. Would you have any clue as to where he was?" She was like, "No." She said, "I can ask some of your brothers and sisters and your aunts and uncles and see if they see him anywhere." And so, days passed, and I'm just like, at this time, I'm still learning how to pray. I'm still like, "God, please let me get my signature that I need." And my grandma calls one day, and I don't think I will ever forget this, man. I still think about it to this day. It was at a time that it broke me in every way, but um my grandma calls my mom, and she's like, "Hey, Mija, hey, daughter, like, hey, we went ahead and found him. We found his dad." And she was like, "Awesome. Like, if y'all just can find a printer or something, basically
Mhm.
so we can fax over the documents, that'd be great." And she was like, "Yeah, that would." She said, "He's asking for money. Say he wants $1,500 for that signature." She was like, "What?"
Mm.
Like, he wants $1,500 for him to sign that paper. And I just remember hearing that, and I'm like, wow, you know, the only thing that I need, I never asked for anything. I never wanted anything. Um, and this is one thing that I just was praying for. And to go from praying and to getting hit with that as a young kid, it kind of breaks you. You start to get into these thoughts as to, so there isn't a God. So there isn't, these prayers are for nothing. And I kind of went rebellious for a couple of days. I remember just going off Facebook and just kind of going off.
Mhm.
Like, that was like, Facebook was my best friend. The people that I had as friends on there, I mean, I had my aunts and uncles, and they're calling my mom like, "Hey, what's wrong with Alan?
Yeah.
Like, he's going off, he's using cuss words." And
Mm.
my mom was like, "What's your deal?" And I was like, I've been praying for, this to go well, and I want this. I want to make something good out of my life." And she was like, "And so that's why you're cussing? Like, that's why you're mad at God, huh?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "So you have no faith. You're only praying for what you want, and you're not being grateful that you're still here, that this application still has hope." And I was like, "I don't think it's gonna work." And she was like, "All right." She was like, "Well, we'll go ahead and start praying together." And so every other night that we could, we started kind of praying together. And I don't know how she did it, but one day she came. It was either she came home or she picked me up from school, and she was like, "We gotta go." She was like, "It's go time. Like, come on, get your stuff. I need you ready." And so I get in the car, and she's not racing, but she's going at a good speed. And we end up at this lawyer's office, and we meet this lawyer, and she's kind of just going back and forth, and my mom's just talking to the lawyer, and she's kind of looking at me, talking to the lawyer, looking at me. And the lawyer says, "All right, so that application has been submitted. You should be hearing back in a couple weeks. So just be on the lookout for this mail." And so we're like, I'm just starstruck as to what's happening.
Mhm.
And a couple weeks passed, and we get this mail, um, and it says to the client of, and it had my name with our address. And my mom was like, "You know what this is?" And I was like,
No.
"I didn't order nothing, I
Yeah.
promise." She was like, "No, this is the start of something new for you." She said, "This is what a prayer gets you, with faith, with practice." She
Mm.
said, "This is what your abuelita wanted you to learn to do, is to pray and always have faith no matter what happens." And so she's like, "Open it." And I'm like, I'm reading it, and it says, "Here's your appointment. Your application has been accepted. Uh, have an appointment to get your biometrics taken."
Wow.
I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, am I being deported? Am I going back?" She's like, "No, that's your entrance to your doc application." So, real quick, the way it works is, once you submit your application, of course, the U.S. Custom Immigration Services, they have to review everything as to your record. So, after looking over everything, they send you this mail to go ahead and get your biometrics taken. So your fingerprints, kind of like a what do they call it? Like a clearance check for
Okay.
your background, like a background clearance check.
Mhm.
And they do all that, and then if all that goes good, they go ahead and they send you your employment authorization card. And so all that's happening, everything's happening so quick, man. And I'm just like, I start wondering in church, from the singing just gets muted. I know the instruments are there. The like I used to go to my grandma liked those churches where the pastor would just scream. And so
Yeah.
that's the kind of churches that we grew up into, but the pastor would just be, you can see his mouth being wide and he's just getting aggressive and holding the Bible, but all that was muted.
Hmm.
All that was just quiet. It's like my world stopped spinning. And I really started questioning my faith as to if I was to tell my grandma, like, I did not like where I was with my faith, would she be disappointed?
Hmm.
And that made me really question as to, do I want to continue growing up in the church? And that's when I realized, yes, I wanted to grow up in the church. And it wasn't none of my mom's fault. It wasn't none of my grandma's fault. But the churches that we were attending were on the south side, and we lived in the north side. And so whenever we would go to the services, most of the kids that would get together, they lived in the south side. So they also went to the same schools. So they kind of started kind of like making their own little groups
Yeah.
in the churches. And I felt out. I felt like I was left out. And so I mean, I started becoming friends with some of them, but still they were doing these camps. They were doing these events, and I just always felt left out. But I felt like that's not that wasn't the end of my faith. That wasn't the end of what my grandma wanted me to discover within the church. So fast forwarding, everything goes great. I graduate high school. I'll go ahead and I did my little good run of college. I did start working, and so fast forward to um, meeting Alexis, my wife. She we got into the conversations about church. Hey, what church do you go to? And I was like, oh well, it's Fe Agrada a Dios, which is right here on it's on Penn between 59th and 44th. And I was like, yeah, I'll go there every Sunday with my mom. She was like, I would love to go to church with you, and maybe you can come to church with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, my past relationship was nothing like that.
Mm.
I felt like it was me shoving, like, hey, come to church, come to church,
Yeah.
come to church. But enough about that. Uh Alexa started coming with me, and she's used to the hymns, and she's used to the lessons not being so long. And
Mhm.
that's what the church that I went to was. It was all loud music, bands, and they were singing out loud. Um, the the services, they were maybe about an hour long, maybe an hour and a half. And so she was like, "Yeah, that's a good people's church." She was like, "That's a good people's church." I was like, "Yeah," I said, "Some of the songs I like them, and, sometimes when the pastor starts to scream, I kinda just lose my thought." And, but she was like, "Well, next Sunday, come to mine." And I will admit, growing up, I was a mama's boy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I told my mom, like, "Hey, Alexis wants me to join her church, or not join, to come visit her church." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, what kinda church?" And I told her, and she was like, "Okay." She was like, you know just remember that it's still a church." And I didn't really understood that. And I was like, okay. And so we came. Uh, I think services started at 11 o'clock. You do your couple singing, and then you get into your lesson, and it was all over within an hour,
Mhm.
just from when service started. And I get home, or we go and have lunch after, and then I get home, and my mom was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Their church is over." She was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "I haven't even left for mine." She was like, "What kind of church is it?" And I look it up, and I'm like, "It's a Church of Christ." And she was like, "Oh, I've heard of that."
Mhm.
She was like, "I don't think there's any Mexican ones, any Mexican Church of Christ." And I was like, I don't know."
Yeah.
I said, "All I've ever been were to the people's churches, or the Pentecostal churches, whatever you want to call them." And she was like, "Okay." She was like, "Did you like it?" And I just automatically knew as soon as I said it. I said, "It felt like home."
Hmm.
it felt good to be greeted by everybody, to not be outcasted, to not to everybody wanting to know my name rather than just be a name, to where they can just be like, yeah, this is, this guy, cool,
Mhm.
he's here. Everybody was interested, like, hey, have you been a Christian, et cetera, et cetera. And so it started being from, every other Sunday to going to switching off the churches. And then I started coming every it'd be 2 Sundays with Lex, and then, 1 Sunday with my mom, and then it started being 3 with
Oh,
Lex,
yeah.
and then it kinda started transitioning into it being my church. And so, our relationship, with, me and my wife at the time, it just started growing, and it was just one of those things to where I was like, "Man, this is a feel good moment." Feels great to, have your partner be in the same church and not like I didn't have to drag her out of bed and she didn't have to drag me out of bed. It
Mhm.
felt good to know like, hey, it's Sunday. I'm excited to see you dress well. You look, let's go get a little coffee before church starts. And I think that's what my grandma wanted me to find is a church that felt like home. Cause anytime that she went to church, it was it was always her home. And I think now being grown up, I think as a Christian, I feel like it's not our job, but it's kinda our adventure to find our home. I feel like it's always, once you find your home in a church, you feel safe, you feel welcome, you feel like you wanna be part of everything that goes on within the church. And, so that relationship started growing, and it was just one of those moments where you were like, "I wanna marry this girl.
That's cool.
I wanna I'm ready. I'm ready to build this life with this girl." And so, every now and then, me and my mother-in-law, her mom, we would, get into conversations about marriage. And she's like, "So do you plan on marrying, my daughter?" And I would play it off because I didn't know how to respond to it. Um, and I would be like, "Nah, I think she needs to work for it." I was just being a funny guy. And one day I left their house and I was like, "I wanna marry this girl. Like, I need to find every and any way to do it." This is she's the one. I knew it from the get-go, but it was just one of those, I wanna make it happen. And then I started meeting some of her closer family, like Alfredo Medina and, her aunt Olga, and everybody was just being super supportive on becoming a member. And it wasn't until, one day Alfredo went ahead and, asked me, "Have you ever been baptized?" And I honestly told him, I said, "I thought that was a Catholic thing." And he was like, "No." He was like, "Have you been baptized? Have you been reborn?" And I was like, "No, I thought once I became a Christian, my mind started
Mhm.
wandering as to what does he mean? Is he trying to ask me something in the nicest way possible
Oh, yeah.
without trying to push me away? And he was like, "No, he was like, "Have you been dipped in the water?" I was like, "No, I've never been dipped in the water." And so he was like, there's a whole meaning as to being baptized." And he was like, "If you would like to learn more about it, um, and would like to be baptized, uh, text me." He was like, "Just text me as to what you wanna do." And so one day, Lex was just like, Why don't you wanna be baptized?" And I was kinda like, I don't know." Said, "I don't have an answer for you. I wouldn't know how to be a Christian." I felt like it was one of those things to where if you are baptized, you become this huge Christian, like
Oh,
in the
yeah.
most perfect ways.
Yeah.
And I knew that that's not what the intentions were from Alfredo. And she was like, "No, it's for you to know that um once God decides your life is over, you get to be in heaven. And she was like, "Have you ever thought about where you're going after you pass away?" And I was like, "I thought heaven, you know?"
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "But you're not baptized." She was like, "And if we're married and I'm baptized and you're not, we're not gonna be together." But I want to be together, you know?
Yeah.
Like I want to be with you forever. It don't matter where you go. I want to be with you forever. And she was like, "Well, really take time to think about it." She was like, "Take time to think about it." Um, and I really, really strongly recommend that you text my Theo, which is Alfredo. So I thought about it and I was like, man, I feel like I don't want to at the moment I felt like I didn't want to make this commitment and not commit. So I kind of talked to him and he kind of broke it down for me. He's like, being a Christian, it's not all perfect. You are gonna meet those people where you tell them like, "Hey, I'm a Christian." They're like, "You guys are the biggest fakers, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys are this and that." He was like, but you gotta remember to stick by your word. Just if if they go ahead and start just telling you these things about Christianity, just remember, that's not what God's intentions are. And so it was uh it was at a Brahms that I texted him and I told him, Alfredo, like, do you mind meeting me here? And he met me up, like he was quick about it. And I was like, I think I'm I think I'm ready. He was like, I don't want you to think. He was like, I want you to be ready. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'm ready. Said I'm ready to be baptized. I'm ready to be born again and I'm ready to live this Christian life that I know um, I'm ready for. I said I'm ready for everything. I'm ready for the marriage that's gonna come with it. If or if and when we get married, and um I just want to be in the best positions. I want to be the biggest Christian influencer that I can be. Um and he was like, okay. He was like, let's do it. I was like, just one thing. He was like, what's up? I said, could you be the person to baptize me? And he was like, really? I was like, yeah. I said, when you talk to me, you remind me of my grandma in a way that I just wish if my grandma was still here that she could baptize. And he was like, okay, I can do that. He said, let's do it. So when you want to do it, and we set up a date and everything, and that whole day, from morning to the time that it was gonna happen, I was just like, okay, like this is it. Like I'm ready. I'm ready to be baptized. I'm ready to give away this life that I used to have of um thinking that my faith is nothing, and living, because being in high school, man, you meet people that you're just not supposed to meet. You run into a lot of things and stuff gets put into your head. And yeah, it was just my high school years I'm not the proudest of. um but I was ready to let all that go, all that bad influence that um was there. I was just ready to just let it go and start this new life. And so we did. It was around the end of April of, I want to say, 2018. Yeah, around April 2018. That's when I got baptized. And then I went ahead and placed my membership with the Southwest Church of Christ. And then we, at the moment, both Lex and I, we didn't live together, but we did stay like down the street from each other.
That's cool.
And so we were on the north side. And so I forgot what it was. It was a coworker that said, "Hey, go ahead and visit our church. It's a Church of Christ. It's on the north side." And we were like, "Yeah, we were living over there by the state fair, so from state fair over here, at the moment, it was just a drive.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the church. Nothing wrong with anybody. It was just the drive for us. We felt like we didn't like coming in late, so we just decided to try North MacArthur Church of Christ at the time. And so, let me just say this real quick. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Let me just say that. And so, we started attending Church of Christ, and sooner or later, we started placing membership. We ended up placing membership. Um, of course, the Moraleses, they went ahead and placed their membership. And since me and Lex weren't married, I just placed my own membership as just Alan Juarez. And so, the the um the minister, Tim Lewis. I don't know if you've heard of
Yeah, I know
Tim Lewis.
Tim.
Tim Lewis, man, he's an awesome guy. He's right there with one of my favorite preachers, and whenever he would just talk, it's like my attention was like all on him at all times. And so, I forgot what it was, and he was just like, "Are you guys married?" And I was like, "No," and she was like, "Yeah, he needs to hurry." And so, one day he just asked me like, "Do you want to marry her?" And I was like, "Man, Tim, I would love to marry her, you know?" And he was like, "So what's what's taking so long?" And I was like, "Tim, I feel like financially I'm not in the right state." And he was like, "So money is why you feel like you're not married." And he was like, "That's not a it's not good." He said, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you're engaged, whatever. He said money will always, just how you look at it, will always either be in a good place or it'll be in a bad place. And so, he gave me that talk, and I felt like with that, it just kind of take out the money issue, and I felt like I was in the perfect state to ask for her hand in marriage. And so, with her mom's blessing, I went ahead and did that, and that was on in November that of 2019 that I went ahead and asked for. I asked her to marry me over at the Orr family farm.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I went ahead and asked her to marry me, and I felt like that Sunday I went up to Tim. I was like, Tim, Tim, Tim. I was like, what's up? He was like, I did it. I asked her to marry me. And he was like, yeah. I was like, well, you look happy. So she said yes. I was like, she said yeah. I was like, man, I'm excited. I'm ready to build this life. And he was like, that's good. That's how you should feel when you get engaged. He was like, I would like to offer you something. He said, you ever heard of marriage counseling or premarital counseling? I was like, no. He was like, he was like, typically you do it whenever before you get married, you learn things about each other that you probably never had a conversation about. He was like, I would like to get you guys into one of my classes of premarital. And so I was like, all right. I asked Lex how she would feel about it, and she was like, let's do it. It's not gonna hurt us. I was like, all right. And so we went ahead and did the premarital counseling, and man, Tim was such a great sport at it. He put us in positions, and he put us in positions and on topics that me and Lex never talked about. It was simple things as to how do you prefer the toilet roll to be on? How do you fold the towels? Who hangs up jeans? Who folds shirts? And it would just he would give us homework assignments to kind of look back on. So he would also be like, how do you when do you want to have kids? When do you plan on retiring? How do you want to retire? And it was just like simple questions that you would have on when you're getting to know each other. But I felt like we never had those type of conversations. And so we started doing the classes, and he asked me, he was like, okay, like when do you guys plan on getting married? And I was like, well, I want to have the money for a wedding. And Lex looked at me and looked at Tim. And Tim was like, "Uh-oh." He was like, "That's not a good look." He was like, "Lex, how do you feel about that?" She was like, "I don't want a wedding." She was like, "I don't want a wedding." And Tim was like, "Alan, what's your thought?" I was like, "I thought weddings were just like a natural thing, as to, it being part of the engagement." I said, growing up being a Hispanic, you always see these Hispanics throwing these big weddings. They just go all out. And that's what I thought I would have to do. Maybe at the time I was looking for approval from my side of the family, not just my mom, but like all of them. Um, and I told him that. He was like, "So you're wanting your family to marry her?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "You're wanting for everything that you do once you guys get married, you want their approval." I was like, "No." Said, I want to make her happy." He was like, "Lex, what did you just say? You don't want a big wedding." He was like, "That's gonna make her happy." He was like, "So why haven't you guys gotten married?" And she was like, "Ask him." And he was like, "Oh, why haven't you guys gotten married?" I was like, "Well, because I don't have the money for a wedding." He was like, "So because of a wedding, you're not married?" I was like, "Yes." And I just sit there and he said that and I'm just like, "I'm not married because I want a wedding." And I was just like, I was like, "You know what?" I said, I don't need a wedding." I was like, if that's what she wants to be happy, I can do that." I said, I'm honestly wanting to strive away from generational habits or curses, whatever you want to call them, as to always seeking family approval. I feel like that was a big thing. I feel like it still is on Hispanic families as to generational curses. Like, oh, if you don't abide by my rules, you're disowned.
Mm.
And so that kind of opened my eyes as to not having a wedding. And once I said that, he was like, "Let's get you guys married next week."
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
what? He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "We'll go ahead and continue these classes." He said, "Once these classes are finished up, I'll sign a paper saying that you guys completed premarital counseling and you'll take it up to the courthouse. So let's get you guys married in my office." I was like, "No way." He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Let's do it." I was like, "Okay, okay." I was like, let's do it." At that moment, I'm like, "All right, let's go." And so January the 23rd was when we got married. But just that day, I remember like I'm not having a wedding and I'm totally okay with it.
That's cool.
I said I get to marry my best friend in front of a pastor that I just I enjoyed hearing them speak. I said, and the only people that I wanted around was my mom and my brother. But my brother had some things going on, so he couldn't make it. But it was my mom and then Lexi's brother and her mom. That's it. And then of course it was Tim who did the little ceremony, and then some of the deacons were, they were just there for support.
Man, that's so cool.
And so
Did you
yeah.
fire up the grill to celebrate after?
No,
And
I
oh,
didn't.
come
I
on,
didn't.
dude.
And typically, people are like, "Well, what did y'all do? What did y'all do?" And we got married. We took the paper up to the courthouse, and we're like, "Yeah, we're married. Like, you're my wife," and she's like, "You're my husband." I'm like, "Yeah, that's weird." Like, but it's
Yeah.
happening. Like, this is that excitement that you want when you are getting married to somebody. You want that excitement to just be between both of you guys.
Mhm.
You shouldn't want approval from anybody but your spouse. And I feel like I never understood that, like I said, because of those habits and because of those thoughts that get fed into us as we're young. And so we ended up just going home. And at the time, it was also COVID wasn't around yet, but it was sneaking up. So we
Mm.
were just like, let's just go home and, chill for a little bit. And then we ended up having dinner at one of our favorite places, which was Johnny Carino's.
Oh.
Can't go wrong with some Johnny
Love me
Carinos.
some Johnny
And
Carinos.
so we asked my brother and his little family, my mom, and she brought her sister, and it was her mom, her brother, her sister, if I said that, it was her mom, her brother, and her sister, and her little family, and they just joined us for dinner. We got we got a little wedding cake. It was just us, and we had dinner. Everybody had a good time, and we went home. And the I was on vacation the next day because I just got married. I want to spend
Mhm.
time with my wife, and so just like that, I was married. It all happened within time, and as I grew up as a Christian, being baptized, that's all I ever asked for. That's all I ever prayed for. I wanted something that I thought I could never get.
Mm.
Being always being taught different things growing up, you're just like, okay, like I need to make this, and that happen in order for this, and this to fall into place. But no, meeting my wife, she always made she always made life simple. You're not always wanting the most out of, like I said, everybody's approval. And she always humbled me. She always supported me. I mean, she was one of the main reasons why the barber business kind of took off too, because she was like, "What are you doing? You cut hair and what?" I was like, "I don't know, just $10, $10." She was like, "So you're spending 5 hours cutting hair for some change when those 5 hours we can spend together?" And I was like,
You're like, I
"Yeah."
love you.
I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "No." She was like, "If you're gonna do this, go all in." She was like, "Or don't do it at all." She was like, "Because if you're not gonna do it at all, and you keep, putting more time into that, then that's where your time is gonna go. Like, you can just forget about me and mines. Like, Imma just do me and you do you, and that's it." I was like, "But no, I don't want that." And so, thought about it, and I told her like, "Yeah, I wanna turn this into something. I wanna turn this into, a passion." And, sooner or later, it did. She kinda did help me, get more into it, business cards and kinda reaching out to people, wanting to learn more. And then, I started doing that, and what else? I mean, I felt like time just flew by. I mean, we've known each other for 5 years, been married for 2. Well, it's
We're in
like,
2022. You're
yeah,
almost
and
fit.
it's
You're
like,
halfway to 50.
yeah, and stop
Sorry,
it.
I had to throw that in.
Stop it.
And then you've got a little girl.
Yeah, and it's like
Man.
we just had a kid, and we still ask each other like, "Does it feel real?"
Mm.
And my answer is no, it doesn't feel real. Like, this is that life that I've always asked for, and for it to be in front of my face, it's like, man, like, how does that not motivate you to want more out of God? How does it not pursue you to wanna read more and practice more? And, now that you have a little one, you wanna see your little one when you're in heaven.
Mm.
And so
It's
I
full
just
circle with your
yeah.
grandma.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
crazy, man. And so, I know it's not, I know it's not a Spanish church, but that doesn't strive me away from wanting to grow with this church.
Yeah.
And this church is always ever since, like I said, I came here, it's always felt like home. And there's nothing wrong with me being that little Spanish speaking person to just stick out in church, and I love it because some people, they try to like, "Hey, what does this mean?" Or, "Hey, how do you say this?" And I enjoy it. And it's and also at the one time when I was in North MacArthur, attending, there was a gentleman. I don't remember his name honestly, man, but he did something down in Texas that uh he was basically trying to start up like a church thing down there, but he wanted to do it further down south of Texas. And that was and he came up to me and he was like, "If I was to offer you a full scholarship, a full like, I take care of your living expenses and everything." And he was like, "To go ahead and do this," he was like, "Would you do it?" And I'm just like, "Man, I've never gotten close to, seeing myself doing that type of stuff." And so I talked about it with my wife, and she was like, "Well, if we want to have kids, we got to think about this and that." And we ended up going in the other direction, but he was like, "I definitely want to keep you in mind for the near future. I feel like you're a good person to throw to the younger Spanish community that we want to build down there." He said, "So I'll go ahead and keep your number and your information." He was like, "But you're a good person." He's like, "You're doing the right thing." um, just being around people that, you know, some days you just don't know how their day's going. You don't
Mm.
know what they're going through. And that made me feel good. That made me want to be like I said, more part of the church. And I still think about it to this day, and it's like, man, if I was to take that offer, I'd be in another state, living somewhere else, being in a church, but it's like, this is honestly my home. And if it happens some other day, maybe I'll take the opportunity, but
Mhm.
for now, I feel like this is what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
I feel like I can reach out to um a lot of people as to barbering and being here in the city. And man, I just don't know. I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I feel like um I feel like God has a lot more in store for me as to being a barber. And who knows, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know,
That's the
man.
awesome thing, man, about this life is we just sit back and we go, I wonder what God's going to do with me next.
Yeah.
Like 2 months ago, I never, ever, ever would have thought I'd be doing a podcast, doing something that I was always thinking like that would be so cool.
Yeah.
I would love it. We just don't know, and it's just so cool how God works through our lives. And dude, you've got a cool story. It's very unique.
Man.
You will not hear another story like your
Yeah.
story. And that's what I love about the kingdom of God, and that's why I wanted to do this because I want to hear those stories and people want to hear those
Yeah.
stories. Because when I'm sitting in the pew next to you, or even though in our auditorium we sit across from each
Yeah.
other, I find myself looking over there and I never knew where you came from. I
Yeah.
never knew your story, and now I
Yeah.
do. And I think that's such a cool
Yeah.
thing.
And your faith definitely gets tested as a Christian, because not too long ago, with that DACA program, we have to renew that every 2 years. So every 2 years we have to submit another application and have to do all that stuff all over again. And the last time I renewed was before COVID, and so my expiration was coming up in August on the 21st. And that time started coming up, and usually they recommend you to submit your application 2 months before. Well, not only that, um, they sent a letter to do it 4 months before because of COVID.
Mm.
So I was already filing in April, just just to be safe, to play it safe. And so, submitted the application, and man, I mean, I got the letter saying that they received my application, but like I said, it still has to be processed, has to still be like overlooked, make sure that you don't have like any warrants. They check your driving record, they check everything. And so, I remember like, all right, and Hobby Lobby, they have a team that specializes in making sure, like, if they have visa workers or people in my situation, that they're on top of it. And so I usually know that it's coming, and so they're like, "Hey, you need to go talk to this person." I was like, "All right, cool." And so I see him. I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's like, "Good." He was like, "You know what? You're in here, right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, I submitted my application like 4 months ago, and I haven't gotten nothing." He was like, "Yeah." He's like, It's getting kind of scary, It's I've got somebody that's been paused on work for 6 months." He was like, "All because he hasn't gotten that back." And I'm like, "Oh," it's like, "You could have sugarcoated it and been like a couple days, but no, 6 months." I was like, man. I was like, all right. He was like, but just, as soon as you get anything, keep me updated. He's like, as long as we're updating the system, knowing that you're doing what you're supposed to, like, we'll go ahead and you can continue to work. I was like, all right. And so time passes, and this is after my expiration date. And I thought they would like come, walk me out and be like, hey, like, you can't come in.
Like this whole movie scene kind
Yeah.
of thing.
And so he was like, hey, have you gotten anything? And I'm like, no. I was like, I've tried calling, I've tried everything. And he was like, all right. He was like, look, I'm just doing my job. He said, it's nothing personal. I don't have anything towards you. He said, but you have, um, so my expiration was in August, and this was like towards the end of September. He was like, coming into October, like, I need you to have something, or we're going to have to put you on that pause. He's like, and you won't be able to, you'll still be in our system, but you just won't be able to clock in. Oh, okay. I was like, okay. And so I would continue to worry about it, man. I was thinking about it. What could I do? I need to pull something because I just can't stop working. It's me and my wife, we both go half and half. Like, I need to put my part in still. And so time passes, man, and it's it was the weekend before the new month started. And so I go ahead and we come to church, and it was when I texted you about you did a sermon,
Mhm.
and it really just took over my whole mentality on my focus on wanting that DACA stuff to just come in the mail. And so after your sermon, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna just not think about it. I said, I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna just put it all in God's hand. I said, I'm gonna just go ahead and pray about it. And so I think you were doing a wedding or something, like a wedding
Yeah, I
rehearsal.
was at a wedding rehearsal when you
And
called me.
so I went ahead and it was like a Thursday you were out there?
I was at Thursday or Friday night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it was Monday, Tuesday, uh I get home from work, check the mail, and it's that same letter with the US Custom Immigration Services.
Which, if I remember correctly, you didn't like check your phone or your mail for like a week or something
Yeah,
after that
like no,
lesson, right?
yeah,
You were
like
like,
I
I'm,
was constantly
yeah.
logging in. I mean, anytime you log in, it gives you like a log as to who logged in, what device they logged into, what time, what date.
Mm.
Like, I mean, they're pretty down to the nail of it. And so I just get home from work and get the mail, and I'm like, no way. I said, stop. I look up and I'm like, stop. And I open it, and there it is. It was so it was the card that said, "Hey, we used your biometrics from the last one since the actual department is closed due to COVID.
Mm.
We do apologize for the inconvenience and it taking so long. But this card should be good to go ahead and get your new driver's license. If you need to update your work status, like all that." And I'm just like, I take it all in. Like, this is like your faith really gets tested when you least expect it. And it's mind blowing that sometimes when we need something, we just pray about it. And sometimes when we feel like we're in the best state of our lives, we just completely forget to pray about it and be
Mm.
grateful for it. And so I just I just got down on my knees and I started praying. I said, "Man, I'm so lost. If I wasn't to have this faith or this hope, I'd be lost. I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be in the I mean, who knows? Somebody drinking. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like nowadays you can get your hands on anything. And I'm just thankful that it didn't get down to that point. And I went ahead and I texted you, and I just thought I'd let you know, like, man, sometimes there's just people out there that are just coming in and just sitting and not listening. And then there's just those people that just really take their time to listen and hear the words that do come out of your mouth. And man, you're doing God's work by just spreading all that. And I feel like that's that's always a good thing to have in a church. I feel like if you don't have that in your church, it won't ever feel like home.
Mm.
Like as much as you force it to want to be your home, it just won't if you don't have the right people by your side. If you don't have the right people that are wanting to keep you around. Like I said, sometimes just coming to church and then just being a visitor to some churches, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth, man. Like it sucks to say, but that's the truth. Because I grew up with that. I grew up going to church, and nobody was like, "Hey, man, like come to this lake. We're gonna be doing the youth group, whatever." It was never none of that. And if it wasn't for me practicing and praying about it, I think I wouldn't be nowhere close to what I am now as to being a Christian. And that all started with almost being deported, if I'm being honest. It all started with that. And so I mean, I try to spread the awareness as to what DACA is, and I always try to those who believe, I try to throw in my testimony and just try to make sure that people don't forget that there is a God that hears them, and that there are people out here that are willing to take some time away from reality and just listen to them. And like you said, we got two ears and one mouth. So yeah.
Man, that was fun. I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us. And um, for those of you who are at Southwest, I hope when you look across auditorium, you can now know where he came from. You can know who he is and his story. And there are a lot of people who have never stepped foot at Southwest and
Mhm.
won't because they just don't live in this area or whatever reason. But there are ways to connect with you. You've got a Facebook.
Yeah. You
You've
can
got
add
an
me at
Instagram.
mhm.
So we'll put his info on this post so you can maybe connect with him or reach out to him and encourage him or say that maybe something he said really spoke to you and,
Yeah.
and touched you. Dude, again, thank you for coming
Man,
on.
it was fun, man. I'm glad you got this going on. I really wish when I was younger that somebody did this that could reach that type of audience that has their faith tested. Because sometimes when you are put in the hardest situations of your life, you just lose all faith
Mm,
and you start wandering into something that's not good, you know, and that's not always fun. I've seen it happen before to where you go from somebody being into the church Wednesdays, Sundays to slowly just start showing up Sundays
mm,
to slowly just saying, yeah, I listened or I seen this stream online to, oh, I'm not going. It starts off slowly, and some people just don't recognize it, and those people need us just as much as the ones who do believe
yeah,
need us too. I mean, it's all like I said, it's all home. You're not just gonna pick and choose who you want to help. Their family, they're your brothers and sisters in Christ. Whether you can relate to them on an age level, I mean, always find your way to just just go out of your way to just greet somebody, ask how they been. Um, Definitely for sure get out there whether you're a big believer or whether you don't believe, because man, you never know who you're gonna run into out there. And
it's true.
I think that is something that I've learned. Like I said, cutting hair is you never know who you're gonna run into. So always know that that simple hello or how you been gets turned into something that you never would have imagined.
Yeah.
And maybe that's your purpose for them. Not everybody that you meet is gonna stay in your life. Um, but you're put in their life for a reason. And I'm a strong believer on that whether I meet you once or whether I continue to see you, I feel like you got a purpose in my life, and I'm a strong believer on that.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. If you don't mind leaving a good review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, that would go a long way. If you're watching on YouTube, maybe subscribe and leave a comment and like the video. That will go a long way as well. Alan, man, thank you so much.
Man,
I
this
had
is
a great
fun.
time with
I
you.
had a good time, man. This is great. This is
All right.
awesome.
And we will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us.